pretty far back. We were up in Mammoth. I was hanging out with Greggy. We were shooting a bunch of Oakley athletes, and it was a big jump. Everyone was hitting the jump, some locals crushing it, and all of a sudden this ball of fire just comes out. He's like 4 feet tall and starts throwing like 1080s. Greg and I looked at each other like, what was that?
You know, the very first time I met him, he was really young. He was fully charging 110% everywhere he go, just trying to go as big and as fast as possible. And you could just tell by his riding that he had something, you know. There's only a few people in the world that you can tell, especially at younger ages, that person's gonna go pretty far places if he just keeps a good head on him.
I remember him just standing out all of a sudden. And every lap we were like, who's this kid? And at one point we just said, call him over here. We're like, hey kid, and he rolls up to us and he's about that tall. And we asked his mom, we're like, how old is he? And he's like, oh, he's 13. Like, 13, oh my God. And right there, Greg and I were like, that was a pinnacle point. He went from East Coast kid coming out to watch his brother snowboard to traveling 8 months a year. He was on the road from that day forward. I think Simon was like changed.
It's a big thing at 13 years old to say, this is what I want for the rest of my life. I'm gonna do everything and anything necessary to get to that point. I was winning X Games when he was still skiing moguls. So it's like, I think I was one of the first guys where he kind of looked at and was like, you know what, it's on. I know what I want to do. Tanner and all these guys, Yoon, like, looks like a good style of skiing, and just comes in, and, he had the respect for me, and then how fast I grew the respect for him, just being like, yeah, man, never really seen a motivated person like that in my whole life.
I felt when I came in, people like, the Tanner Halls, the Yoon Olsons, the Dave Crichtons, they were bringing, unique style, and that's what their focus was at that time, to bring some style into it, and because all the tricks were there. They just needed a little extra flair and a little style, and that was the time to do it.
This year, the gnarliest thing that I probably saw was David Crichton's alley-oop flat spin at the World Ski Invitational. That was off the meat rack. It was pretty sick. Crichton went for it that day. He was charging. Style is developing so crazy now in the last years. I'm scared to see what it's going to be like in the next couple.
Dumont is pretty much a self-motivated master that can go out every single day and kill it. Like, first run, not be scared, not any hesitation, just go out and throw down. Pretty much tricks that are like 1/4 of the size smaller than things he'd do in competition, Like, every day he goes out, it's just the same thing as in a comp. He's not, during a competition, really going crazy or anything. It's just bringing it to a little bit higher of a level than his regular day skiing. He's just a really smart kid that will bring skiing to another level.
All the guys basically noticed Simon. Everyone was talking about Simon Dumont. Back in the day when we were filming, everyone was like, oh, is Simon coming? Is Simon coming? Because they knew that if he showed up on the chute, he was going to push the level of the chute, no matter what it was, whether it was rails or a park jump or whatever, or even backcountry. He was going for it. He was charging. And all those guys were talking about him. When he showed up at the chute, they were like, oh man, now I'm gonna have to step up because this 14-year-old kid's gonna blow me out of the water. And they knew it, and everyone knew it. And he was making a statement pretty much everywhere he went.
The Dumont. I don't know, it seems like he's not really human. He's really small, and for somehow he's got some special strength inside of him. Unexplainable.
Yeah, I was just that kid lucky enough to be able to travel around with, all the legends of the sport. I think they accepted me, but I always felt like I had a little bit more something to prove. Always something more. And I didn't really know where to prove it. And then, X Games, I think that was the biggest venue. They were all there. Everybody was competing. And it was, my chance to prove that I could hang with everybody. When I was 14, first X Games.
What was that like?
First X Games, my first contest was, or first major contest, not being on the East Coast, like a local contest. It was X Games qualifier. First time I actually remember being nervous. Nowadays, not so much nervous at all, but that first contest, most nervous I've ever been. My whole body was shaking, it was craziness. But yeah, moved on from there, got some experience. Went to X Games that year, didn't get last, which was pretty sweet. 14 years old, did my first 9 actually in the contest. And yeah, I mean, I think that was a big stepping stone. I realized that you can make a career out of it. I could still have as much fun, and I got to go, you know, on the competitive side, which is something that is always appealing to me. If I can compete and try and win at something, I want to do it. And I love skiing, so you know, it just seemed like the right thing to do.
Well, Tanner was always a finesse guy. He rode the half pipe like a skateboarder. You know, everything he did was flow and style. And I remember that particular year, Candide and C.R. Johnson boosted. It was like when skiing went bigger than snowboarding in the half pipe. That's when everything changed for the half pipe, for skiing.
Yeah, when X Games introduced half pipe, I think that was the dawn of a new decade. CR and Candide definitely took the top honors, whether or not CR fell or not. You know, it was first and second place, Candide and CR. That was like the first time anybody saw what pipe skiing can become in the future. If we, you know, kind of all come together and try to make it work.
I remember Simon being up at the top and rolling into the half pipe and looking at me, he goes, I'm gonna go huge. He had just seen Candide and CR go macking in training. And I remember him go so big, and he just completely decked out. He landed half on the deck. It was crazy. But he got back up, surprisingly enough, like he always does, and came back up to the top, made his runs. I think he almost qualified. I think he crashed again. It was one of those go for broke situations, and he crashed at the bottom or something. But that was it. I knew that changed everything in half pipe. And sure enough, he came back the next year and won.